Okay. I think we're going. We're ready to go. Hello. Can everybody hear me? I hope you guys are doing well. My name is Alyse, also known as Nanairomiso. I am a Black person that lives in Japan. Thank you. And I'm going to give a cute little panel about living in Japan so that all you people interested in going will have, you know, you'll be ready to go. You'll have everything you need. That's my cat. So if you hear meowing in the background, that's him. So can you see my little screen? Thank you. Okay. That's my husband also screaming downstairs. So Shota, be quiet. So while I'm doing the panel, if any questions come up, just like drop them in the chat. And then I'll try to wrap up pretty quick. And then I'll do all the questions at the end. Also, just in case I might answer your question while I'm giving the presentation. So I will save all the questions for the end. So, onegaishimasu. So, a quick guide to life in Japan. This is about me, my About Me page. I'm from the DMV. If you guys aren't familiar with the acronym, it's the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Specifically, I'm from Virginia and Maryland, born in Virginia, raised in Maryland. And I went to school in DC and I worked in DC until 2010. And I was at the Art Institute studying animation. A lot of my friends, I think, now do animation stuff. Sadly, not me. One day, I hope to get back into animation, though. So I moved to Japan in 2010, and I started teaching English. The reason I moved to Japan, though, is because I met my husband screaming downstairs in DC, and we decided to get married. In order to do that, we moved to Japan, and that was supposed to be a short-term 5-year thing. Now we've been here for 10 years. So you never know what will happen in your life. I started translating in 2013, which is now like 7-8 years ago. I worked at a third-party localization company, which means that first-party companies will contact us, or contacted us since I don't work there anymore, to do translations for their games. So I worked at Nintendo for a bit. I did a few months at Platinum Games. I worked at Digital Hearts, and I mostly worked on LQA, which is the language quality assurance. So we would play a linguistic quality assurance, and we would play the game and check all the text in the game and make sure it made sense. And my first game that I worked on was Killer is Dead, which was on the Xbox and PlayStation 3, I think. Very old game, not a very good game, but it was entertaining. And I think the translation was pretty crap. I didn't translate it. I just played it. And I was like, this is rough, but it was interesting. I started a punk band in 2012, which will be on our like 10-year anniversary next year, which is wild. So I played in some live houses in Osaka, couple festivals, one festival maybe, and I've done festivals in New Caledonia, which is in the Pacific Ocean, close to New Zealand. That was the biggest music festival we've ever done, and that was really cool. And we've also played in Hong Kong, which makes me sad that we can't like actually go anymore, because that was a really cool place. I started DJing a couple years ago, so I do DJ at clubs occasionally, but I don't really like the club scene so much. It's just okay. And I just listed some of my favorite games and anime. It's a lot of older stuff, just because I'm very picky about my stuff. But I will give something like a 1-episode chance before I hate on it. And then I bought roller skates last year, because who wouldn't buy roller skates now that they're like so much fun? And a lot of Japanese people look at me funny when I roller skate in the park. So yeah, that's me. And just a quick overview of what we won't be able to cover, just because there's so much to cover in the topic of living in Japan. I won't really cover how to get to Japan, because there's a lot of information on it. It's not really a mystery so much anymore. So many people have talked about the experiences with Jet or with Interact. So I feel like you could probably find that information pretty quickly. And it's pretty straightforward. You apply to a company, you have an interview in the States, and then they will pay for you to come to Japan. As far as I know, only English teaching companies usually do this method of recruiting. Like friends that I have that work in other companies that are not English teaching companies, I believe they got the job after they came to Japan. So that is why you won't usually see job recruiting information for anything outside of English teaching if they're pulling people from outside of the country. And unfortunately, I can't really talk about the experiences of Black queer folk because I'm not queer. I don't identify as queer, so I don't really have experience of interacting with Japanese people as a queer person. But there are accounts I think that talk on it. I should have gotten information on those accounts. Sorry, I didn't. I can do that later on Twitter and share that with people if you need me to. And I do recommend following Black creators that have experience with Jet or with Interact or as a queer person in Japan. And in the next few slides, it's just a few people. You can take some notes, write some handles down of people you can follow on Twitter and on Instagram that said they were open to answering questions about the Jet program, about being an ALT, which is the language teacher, assistant language teacher, maybe. You basically stand in the classroom with the Japanese teacher and you are what people describe it as being a human tape recorder, which doesn't sound very glamorous. But some people have actually moved on to being like getting their teaching license in Japan. So like it's a path you can make work for you. But all of these beautiful people are on Twitter. They're on Instagram. These are their handles. If you have any questions, you can ask them directly. They already know that I'm giving out their information. So feel free to interact with them. And yeah, that's it for the intro. I'm going faster than I expected. Whoops. Sorry if I'm speaking too fast. Let me know because I tend to ramble on these things and go over my time limit. So before you leave the country, some things you want to consider. And I promise I'll have more images later in the presentation, but this is the boring stuff that really doesn't need images because it's pretty self-explanatory. You got to bring your favorite like shampoos, lotions, face washes, hygienic products. The hygiene products sold here will be different from what you're used to in your home country. Lotion is not really, I mean, like the lotion they have here is a bit liquidy. It's like, it's not like creamy. It's not like full of cocoa butter or anything. It's like really, it dries to the point where it just disappears off the skin because they don't like the greasy feel. So you might not feel as moisturized. So I would recommend bringing some like a cocoa butter stick, especially if you got like dry skin and you need like a little extra love. Face washes, I am suspicious of a lot of Japanese face washes because they use skin lightening products a lot. So I tend to stay away from Japanese cosmetics just because I don't feel like reading through all the ingredients to figure out if the ingredients are dangerous. Also, they still use a lot of parabens and a lot of chemicals in their cosmetics. So if you're into like more organic stuff, you'll probably have to bring it from the States or order it online because organic products have only very recently gained traction in Japan. If you wear foundation, they will probably not have your shade in most cosmetic stores. So bring extra foundation. Every time I go home, I buy foundation. And now I have like 5 bottles of foundation. Like I wear foundation all the time. I don't, but it's just nice to have because you can't go out and buy it here. I recommend bringing like English language books and games or movies because you can't buy them here. And DVDs are really expensive here. DVDs and Blu-rays are like, you can't get a $20 Blu-ray here in Japan. Blu-rays start pretty much at like $30 or $40. And they don't have extras because they would have to translate all the extras. So if you like I do, watching movie extras for like Marvel movies or Disney movies, I would recommend just bringing them from the States because the Japanese versions will not have them. Also, if you like watching anime, there's Netflix here, there's Hulu, there's Prime, we have Disney Plus. I think that's all of them. That's all the major ones. But a lot of the animated content is not translated unless it's specifically like a show that Netflix made. They won't have English subtitles. They'll just have Japanese subtitles because they are assuming that, I guess, only Japanese people in Japan will watch it. So even though you'll get more anime to watch here, unless you speak Japanese, you won't be able to watch it, which is like the worst. I feel like if you come here for the anime, but you don't speak the language, you'll be super disappointed. So maybe get started studying so that you'll be okay when you get here. I don't know. It's just something to think about. Also bring your medical records, especially if you take medication, because the types of medication that are legal in America are not always legal in Japan. And so even bringing them, sometimes you can get in trouble. But also, sorry, if you need to get like a refill on your meds, yeah, you're going to have to get probably your prescription translated, or you'll probably have to visit a Japanese physician, talk to them and get them to write you a prescription. English speaking doctors are a thing in most major cities. So if you don't speak Japanese perfectly, you will be able to find probably a general practitioner that speaks English. It's not always the best English, but I mean, usually when your body is acting up, that's kind of a universal thing. So hopefully you'll be okay. I mean, if you really have problems, just contact me. I don't know. Hopefully they'll have someone that can help you. But if worst come to worst, just hit me up on Twitter and I will help you find somebody. Okay, I'm going to get the like depressing news out of the way first, and then we'll go do all the fun stuff, all the great stuff about Japan. But first, just know that racist shit happens in Japan. Sorry for my bad words. Yeah, races are sadly all over the world. It is a global disease. And Japan is no different, even though I think they like to think that they're super open to other cultures and global. There's a lot of kind of not even hidden racism, but subconscious racism that occurs within the group. There's very aware and very upfront and conscious racists as well. But a lot of the things, like in the slide, there's the dude in blackface. He's a famous comedian, and for him, for Japanese people in the 2000s, wearing blackface is like, oh, that's what we do because we like this person, but they're dark skinned, so I have to make my skin dark to look like this person that I'm impersonating. So it's not necessarily like the same connotation that we have here in blackface, but it's still really freaking disgusting to see, and we hate to see it. And luckily, this screenshot I think was taken by a journalist here in Japan, a Black journalist, and he wrote about it on Twitter and was like, you guys need to cut this shit out. This is not funny. It's never been funny. And he was able to get a musical group that does blackface. He was able to get their segment taken off the air because he petitioned for that. But sometimes, yeah, you'll have to like step up and be like, yo, this is like really racist. Like, you guys shouldn't be doing this. And you might even have to explain how it's racist, because they'll be like, oh, no, they don't mean it in a bad way. It's okay. And it's like, that doesn't matter. You shouldn't be doing it. And you'll find a lot of racist iconography, like, you know, the really red lips. And I think there's a few children's books that, like a Little Black Sambo children's book that's still for sale here. Another TV program used really racist caricatures of Black people to explain the Black Lives Matter movement, which really like irritated the hell out of all of us. And luckily, we spoke up so much that the same TV program, our TV station, NHK, it's a national broadcasting company, think PBS, they contacted me and a few other Black people in Japan and was like, you know, we really need to like make a program to explain how this is racist and how this is wrong. And so we were able to work with them to create a TV special about Black history. And so, you know, sometimes these really effed up situations happen, but it becomes a teachable moment. And if you're up to teaching, then 100% do what you can, but it's not your responsibility either. Like, it's exhausting, right? Being Black. So don't feel like you have to teach people about being racist all the time. Like, if you're not feeling it, just be like, look, it's racist. Please don't do it. Thank you. And like, move on. And then to talk about the little car at the top, this is a Uyo Dantai, I think is Uyo. I forget the name. I mean, it's a racist group. They're nationalists. Their cars like play old war music from like pre-World War II, which anybody that knows World War II history knows that Japan was super nationalist, super imperialist. They killed a lot of people. They conquered a lot of nations in Asia, and that's why they're like bad vibes in Asia for the most part. But these nationalist groups are still like harking over stuff that happened in pre-war Japan, and they think that they're the best and that foreigners should leave their country and yada yada yada. And they will drive around the city with these trucks blaring this music and these really offensive, I mean, really not, they're not like saying like foreigners should die or anything, but they're basically like, we have to protect our country from, you know, the foreigners, and we have to protect our emperor, you know, typical nationalist bullcrap. They're out every week, usually on weekends. But luckily, they're a pretty small percentage, I think, of the population. Most people aren't nationalists. Most people aren't really like, you know, we were wrong in the war. They don't really have this line of thinking. They think war is bad. You know, they're apologetic about things that happened in the past, which is nice. But sometimes you will see like crazy racists driving through the town. And sometimes some police interactions will not be the best. Yeah, it does. Some police interactions are a little bit suspect. And because you are not Japanese, they can just ask, well, I mean, they can ask any person, Japanese or not Japanese, to like show stuff in their bag. They don't have to have probable cause like in the States where you have to look like you committed a crime before they can ask you to show your stuff. They can just stop you, ask for your ID, and then ask to see your bag. That's like within the laws of Japanese stuff. But if the reason they stop you is because you're a foreigner, that's where it becomes like, that's not technically legal, technically. Recently there was a young half black, half Japanese kid that was stopped by police, and the police basically said to his face, like, oh, you have dreads, and people with dreads usually have drugs, and that's why I stopped you. Like, according to my history as a police officer, people with dreads are more likely to have drugs, so I have to stop you, or some bull crap like that. And so that became a big deal on the internet, luckily. So yeah, that shit will happen. But, you know, I think racist stuff happens in every country. Luckily, if you don't speak Japanese, you'll be pretty immune to most of the racist stuff. But yeah, just be aware that it is out there. Anyway, fun stuff. So in Japan, each region is pretty different. I've used these pictures to illustrate basically how different they are. Tokyo is the pretty Disney, like it's very clean image wise. Osaka is a little bit raggedy on the edges, but I love it anyway. Like a lot of Japanese people describe Osakan people as very outgoing and very forward, you know, they'll say what's on their mind, whereas people in Tokyo have to protect their image, so they won't be as likely to say what's on their mind. And then I had to throw in a third region just because you can't always talk about Tokyo and Osaka. So I picked Nagoya, but Nagoya is what we would describe as shoboi, which is just a little bit boring. Like there's not much going on in Nagoya, but it's a fine city and it's not a bad place to live. It's just, it doesn't have any like name brand theme parks, even though there's a Legoland now. It's just a little bit more quiet. The club life is a little bit more quiet. You know, the music scene, not quite as vibrant, but it's, you know, it's still got a large population, so you'll be happy. But just know that when you go to Japan, don't expect everything to be like Tokyo. Tokyo is Tokyo. It's actually very special because of the way it's, you know, set up. Tokyo isn't a city, it's a prefecture first. So within the prefecture, which is like a state, there are different cities. So Shibuya is a city, Shibuya is a city, Shinjuku is a city. Do I know any other cities in Tokyo? I mean, all the other 23 special wards, they're all technically small cities within the state of Tokyo. So like you can't just think, oh, Tokyo is like the city I can hang out in, or you will be very confused and you'll be very far away from places you want to go to. So when living in Japan, you have two options. Well, yeah, you have two options, apartments or houses, like any other place. There are advantages and disadvantages to each. Currently, I live in a house. Before, I lived in an apartment for 4 or 5 years. So you can see that's image of my apartment at the top. Apartments tend to be very tiny, and but they will have like the best amenities in the room. Like I had heated floors, or I had the bathroom had a heater in it, so you could heat up the bathroom before you went in, because in Japan a lot of homes do not have insulation. So in the winter, basically the inside of your house is the same temperature as outdoors, so it's pretty cold. The walls are pretty thin in most homes and apartments, so be aware of like noise levels, of your own noise level, and then maybe you'll hear your neighbors, and that'll suck. Overall, houses in Japan tend to be a little bit cheaper because they require a little bit more work in terms of heating or just maintenance in general. While apartments, while they cost more money, you just don't have to do as much. You can just live there pretty carefree. Personally, I am preferring living in a house now than I am the apartment. My apartment at the time also just wasn't the best apartment. But yeah, like don't feel like you have to live in an apartment. If you're not feeling an apartment, definitely look into moving into a house. You can rent out houses. There are a lot of houses that are available to rent. Then you also have to think about countryside versus city life. The countryside, as you can see from my images, is very empty. There's not much going on in the countryside. A lot of businesses close at like 8. There's not much of a club scene in most countrysides. It's just going to be you and the mountains and some Japanese people. But if you're into that, like if you like camping, you'll be happy. There'll be lots of nature. They're pretty into like outdoor activities. So most large supermarkets, how do you say it? Like a Target? What is that called? I don't know what a Target is called. But like the stores like Target in Japan, we call them eons. They'll sell like camping equipment, or like rock climbing was really popular for a few years. I think now glamping is really popular. So people like doing fancy camping. Most places in the countryside aren't very far from like major cities. So if you do get a little like lonely, you can always take a train to a bigger city. In the city life, you see the images get a bit more colorful. There's a lot more going on in the city. Me personally, I like the underground scene, so I hang out at a lot of strange bars and clubs. But there is nothing like that in the countryside, whereas in the city, you can find that kind of stuff pretty easily. The images is like, starting from the left, that's like, what's it called? Naked sushi? I don't know what you call it. Body sushi? My English is leaving me right now, but you eat sushi off the lady. I didn't eat sushi off that lady because I don't know her, but other people were eating sushi off that lady. The second image is another event for this really popular bar that's in Osaka. It's called Far Plane, and they do a lot of crazy events, and that was one of their big events from 2016. The third image is of Soimoncho, which is kind of the red light district, I guess. Not kind of, sort of. It's where a lot of bars, clubs, snacks, host clubs, hostess clubs, and actually, I don't think the prostitution houses are really in Soimoncho, but there's so many buildings they could be in there. I don't really know. Prostitution is technically legal in Japan as long as there's no insertion. Also, just a side note, random weird side note. I'm so sorry, but just so you know, that's how the law works here. The fourth image is Sky Building, which is a really big building. There are lots of big buildings in big cities if you're into looking at buildings and going to the top floor and seeing the cityscape. The fifth image is a Mano Yoshitaka exhibition, which was from 2016. Exhibitions come through cities like really often. So if you like into art and you want to see a lot of like cool exhibitions, definitely living in the city will give you that advantage. Also, music events. That last image is from Music Circus, which was like a large EDM festival they had a couple years ago. And yeah, luckily being a foreigner, we got in for free because I guess they just wanted foreign people at the event. But yeah, being in a city, you get access to these kind of things that you just don't really get in the countryside. And now I realize I can't see my notes. So if I wanted to mention anything else about this panel or this slide, I hope I remember. Oh, well, yeah. If you want to find like underground events, they don't usually advertise them so much because what's the point of being underground if you show everybody? But usually if you find the right people, they'll give you the heads up. Oh, there's this event, there's this like rave, there's this party. You should check it out. But you got to kind of like do the groundwork and hit up bars and clubs and like get to know people. But that's also part of the fun of living in the city, just, you know, going to bars and clubs. Osaka and Tokyo obviously will have more clubs than maybe Fukuoka or Nagoya. Recently, hip hop is the most popular genre of most clubs. Back in like 2013, everyone played Lady Gaga. So it really just depends on whatever's popular. Though some clubs do only play like hip hop, or some clubs only play like J-pop or pop music. So you can usually find something you like. And then, of course, there's work you can do outside of English teaching, because not everybody wants to teach English. That's not that much fun if that's not what you're into. In order to get out of the English teaching business, though, you will need Japanese. You just have to. I mean, that, I guess that should be pretty common sense kind of thing. But luckily, if you're in Japan and you speak Japanese, but you don't have like the JLPT, was that Japanese language proficiency test certificate? If you don't have that certificate, that doesn't mean that you can't apply for jobs. Like, no one's gonna stop you, or no one's just not gonna talk to you because you don't have a certificate, especially if you submit your application in Japanese. As long as you can show that you speak Japanese, and you will have to have an interview anyway, so they're gonna talk to you, and when they're talking to you, they feel like your Japanese is good enough, that'll be all you need. That's how I got my translation job back in 2013. I just applied after studying, and I felt confident enough in my Japanese to use it. I applied, and they were like, yeah, that's fine. And the rest is history. Software engineering is they are recruiting a lot of people for software engineering, engineers in general, actually, because I don't know, I guess a lot of Japanese people aren't really into software engineering. So they are recruiting a lot of people from other countries to do software engineering in Japan at like major companies. So, and in cases of like software engineering, where this is like a highly technical skill, you don't really have to have like super amazing Japanese. Like, as long as they can just give you instructions and you can follow the instructions, that's enough. They really just need someone that knows how to do like software engineering shit. Like, that's the most important bit. Speaking Japanese is nice. It would be a plus. But if they really need a software engineer, they're going to probably hire you. Creative fields, I've seen a lot more job ads in the creative field that seem pretty open to foreigners, like web design. I've seen a lot of gaming studios recruiting for positions outside of just localization. So, like, if you have the skill set and you have the language set, just go ahead, just go for it, just apply. The worst thing that'll happen, they'll say no. But the best thing that'll happen is they'll say yes. So just go for it is all I can really suggest. If you want to get into modeling or acting or music, do it. Like, go all the way too. Because like when I started playing in my band, I was very like, oh, but I don't know. And like, I wasn't really into it. And now I kind of regret that I just didn't go all the way with it, because, you know, maybe we could have gone a little bit farther. But I mean, it's cool. Also, doing music in Osaka is just harder than in the major city of Tokyo, because everybody that does music, everybody that does acting, everyone that does modeling, they're all in Tokyo. So if you don't go to Tokyo, you're less likely just to get noticed. You're less likely to get work. You're less likely to get, you know, recognition for your music. It's just going to be a lot harder if you're not based in Tokyo when doing these kinds of things. Software engineering and stuff like that, you don't really have to be in Tokyo. I think you could probably be wherever the company is. But for things like in the entertainment industry, you are kind of forced to be in Tokyo, which sucks because I don't like Tokyo. So we've given up on them. Lastly, you could also work at a bar or own a bar. A lot of my friends that are not Japanese own bars here in Osaka. Back when there was no corona, they were doing very well. I don't know how easy it is to get a bar. I would have to actually, you know, ask them in depth. We don't usually go over their like business situation when we're hanging out. But if that's something people would be interested in, I could definitely like ask them and write up something on my blog or make a YouTube video about it. I just don't know if that's what people are into. But yeah, starting your own business in Japan, a lot of foreigners have done that. Or if you just like want to work at a bar part-time, a lot of people do that. It also depends on your visa though. If your visa will allow you to work in the nightlife, because to work in a bar, some bars might need the prostitution license because Japanese laws are very messed up and archaic. So then it becomes like you're working in prostitution, even though you're technically not. And does your visa allow that? It gets a little fuzzy. So if you're not sure about your visa status, maybe just don't. Just enjoy drinking at the bar. So my photos are, the top one is from a video project that I did last year, which was my first video project ever. And I'm really glad that we were able to do it. We worked with the Japanese Tourism Bureau and their Japanese Cultural Affairs Agency office to make a video about Kiezan, which is a Buddhist mountain. It's a really famous Buddhist retreat. It's a Buddhist place in Shiga, next to Kyoto. And they were really uncertain about giving this job to a bunch of foreigners, I think, but they did it anyway. And I think we did a really good job. So hopefully we can inspire more Japanese companies to trust us non-Japanese people with their projects, especially when it comes to tourism, because who knows more about what tourists want than people that are not Japanese, right? That just makes sense. The second image is my band when we were doing the festival overseas. First time we got paid, because also in Japan, if you have a band, you will not get paid unless you fulfill your noruma, which translates to normal, which doesn't mean anything in English in that sense. But basically, it's the minimum amount of tickets that you have to sell to make money back from the other tickets that you sold. Like the live house will not just pay you to play, like in the States. You have to sell a minimum number of tickets, and then everything else that you sell ticket-wise, you will get like 50% back or something like that. So it's a very difficult system. Most bands don't make money. They end up using more money than making money, which is why only a lot of pretty privileged kids kind of do band work, because you have to spend so much money. You have to spend money on your instruments. You have to spend money on your studio to practice in, because you can't practice at home. And then you have to spend money on the live house. It's just lots of money. We don't spend money. We are a hobo band. But even so, these fringe people based in New Caledonia found us and were like, hey, you should play at our rock festival. And they invited us and they paid us. And it was the first time we ever got paid. And it felt really nice to get paid for something. And then the third one is a TV program. They will sometimes ask for non-Japanese people to be on TV programs. Whether they will pay you is another problem. There are a lot of TV programs that are like, hey, look at this foreigner that likes Japan. And they just invite you to be on the TV program and they won't pay you. I mean, if you want to get paid, you should tell them that. Don't do it for free unless you want to. For this program, they paid us because we were participating in a discussion about Black Lives Matter. And I presented a short presentation on Black history, which a lot of my friends that watched the program were like, wow, I didn't know about Black history. So that was helpful. Which, yeah, they don't teach Black history in schools in Japan. Big surprise. So that often leads to rather racist things occurring. But yeah, this program, they hired us to go on TV, NHK channel, to present just our experiences as Black people in Japan and a little bit of Black history. More boring stuff. Oh, taxes and healthcare. But you're adults now, so you got to do it. If you're full-time, though, your company will take care of your taxes. They will take care of your healthcare. There is a national healthcare system in Japan, so you don't have to worry about being without healthcare necessarily. If you don't have your insurance card, they will force you to pay the total cost of your care. But if you do have your insurance card, you only pay for 30%, I believe. And I think the elderly only pay for 10%. The rest is covered by the government. If you decide to go freelance or do any other work other than full-time company work, then you will have to file your taxes on your own, which is a headache. I can attest to that because this year I filed my taxes as a freelancer for the first time, and it took maybe like 2 or 3 hours at the tax office. And it was very stressful, and none of the information is in English. So I don't think it was in English. I'm trying to remember, but the memory is a bit, I don't want to remember. But yeah, if you do freelance work, you will have to file your taxes on your own. Or if you have any kind of outside income other than your company, you will have to file taxes for that. I don't know how good they are at tracking people, but I wouldn't chance it, because especially for foreigners, like if they find out you owe money and you leave the country, they won't let you back in the country until you pay. So keep that in mind. And also, if you leave your full-time job, for example, if you leave your job in March, the new fiscal year starts in April, and you have to file like your taxes and you have to pay city taxes and stuff like that. But you left your job in March, you will still have to pay taxes on your salary that you made the previous year in April. So save up your money if you like decide to like change jobs or something, because you will have to cover the cost of your taxes, especially if you made a butt ton of money the previous year, but now like say you're a freelancer, you have to start from zero. They will still want you to pay taxes on your salary from last year. So you'd have to save up at least the previous year's worth of taxes, which is confusing, even when I say it out loud. But yeah, that's, if you want more detailed information, it's probably easier for me to like write it to you. Something to remember too, which I didn't realize until recently, sadly, is that you have to really prepare for your future, as in retirement, yourself. Even though there is a pension scheme in Japan that you do pay into, especially as a full-time employee, just don't rely on that because you're not a Japanese citizen. So I just feel like it's not the most secure thing. Like if they decide one day, like, hey, we don't have enough money to cover pension for everybody that paid in, we're only going to cover it for citizens or something effed up like that, then you don't have, like, you got nothing. Companies don't, at least my company didn't have a 401k. I don't know about bigger companies like Rakuten or, like Panasonic, like national companies. Maybe they have some kind of pension scheme set up aside from the national pension scheme. But if you are a non-Japanese person living in Japan, I would suggest you just start your own investment account, an IRA or some kind of account that you can put money into for your own personal retirement. Like, it's just a smart thing to do. And yeah, the image on the right is of the Seikatsu Hogo, which is like public assistance. The public assistance for 2019 and 2010, or 2019 and 2020. As you can see, it's actually like going down. So they paid out less public assistance, even though a crap ton of people lost their jobs in 2020. So a lot of Japanese people even are concerned about like public assistance from the government. Like they're not giving it out. So don't rely too much on the government. They're kind of broke anyway. All right, fun nerdy stuff. Look at all my nerdy pictures. I have so many nerdy pictures. That's one upside about living in Japan, because animation culture is a big part. Is it a big part of Japanese culture? I think that's up for debate. I will say, at least for someone coming into Japan, right? You'll be like, oh my God, everyone loves Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball's everywhere. But people love Dragon Ball because that's what kids watched when they were little, the same way that we watched Bugs Bunny when we were little. That doesn't necessarily mean that we love Bugs Bunny, you know what I mean? But we just all grew up watching that kind of thing. So it feels like, anime is everywhere. But I think like anime fans in Japan are not quite, it's like it's a little bit different than in the States, right? So like, for example, the marine area picture. This is from Universal Studios Japan. Also the picture of Luffy screaming like a crazy person. This is also from Universal Studios Japan, because they have a One Piece event every summer where they decorate part of the park in like scenes from One Piece, and they have actors that come out as the characters and they act out different scenes from the TV show. Lots of people go to this event, but they wouldn't necessarily call themselves like hardcore anime fans. right? The TV program is just so unanimous. It's been going on for 20 years. People grew up watching One Piece, so it's more just like a natural thing to do. I don't know. I don't know if I'm making sense when I describe, but like when you say like you like anime in Japan to a Japanese person, it means you're like super duper super super hardcore and into anime. If you just like One Piece but you don't necessarily like anything else, then they wouldn't call you an anime fan. They'd like, oh, you just like One Piece kind of thing. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? But so yeah, in Japan, there's a lot of theme cafes, a lot of theme events. There's a Sailor Moon Cafe, which is the top right. The people in cosplay, this is actually a super, super large cosplay event in Nipponbashi. Nipponbashi is the equivalent of Akihabara in Tokyo, the nerdy district. So in Osaka, we call it Nipponbashi. I mean, that's just what the area is called. And every year they have a huge cosplay event. I think it's like tens of thousands of people show up, and there's nothing really going on. It's just people in costume walking around. But for some reason, it's become really popular in Japan. So I used to live right next to that area. So I used to just walk down and you can take pictures of all the cosplayers. So the Deadpool, the Cloud, the Joker, those are all at that cosplay event. And then the Kinopio, Toad, that's at the Super Nintendo World, which just opened this month. So theme parks, we usually have some kind of anime related event that goes on for a limited time. For Universal Studios, it's usually Shonen Jump, stuff from like the Shonen Jump comic series. So they had Attack on Titan a few years ago. They've had events. They had a Sailor Moon event. They had a Dragon Ball event. They've done Evangelion events. They've done a lot of the major shows that are like just popular globally. But unfortunately, these events are not usually done in English. So even if you go to them, if you don't speak Japanese, you might not have as much fun. But I would go anyway because it's just fun. What other events are on here? The one at the bottom where I'm in cosplay, that's not actually like it was a nerdy club event. There are nerdy club events, which I think is really cool. So like there's otage, which is the dancing with the glow sticks. That's called otage. So there are club events for people that do that and they want to just dance to like anime songs for like a few hours at night. You can usually find these kinds of club events. They're usually on the weekdays because they're not like the general public is not really looking for an Anisong club event. But one of my friends used to DJ at it. And, it's really fun to just hang out with a bunch of nerds and like scream over your favorite anime opening. Wow. When I say that out loud, I realize how nerdy I am. And wow. So yeah, that event was one of those like anime related kind of club events. And they encouraged people to dress up in cosplay. So my cosplay is from Tokyo Ravens, which I don't know if anyone has really watched, but yeah, that ending was that was And then you'll have like more kind of low key events where collaboration events. So the image on the left is for a collaboration event for Token Nambu, which I don't know what the English translation of that is. It's the browser game about guys that are swords. And not Tokyo, but the Kyoto Eigamura, Kyoto movie theme park had a collaboration event with that browser game because it's really, 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 really popular. So they encourage people to wear cosplay to their theme park because it's not really a theme park. It's actually a movie studio that's used for jidaigeki, which is period films, Japanese period films. So you can like go there in like a kimono and you can take pictures in front of like old Japanese buildings and stuff like that. So yeah, like those kinds you can find so many like anime tangent events, like anime related events, but it's not necessarily because there are a lot of nerds is basically what I'm saying. Like don't assume like every Japanese person you meet is going to be hella kuwashi. They know a lot about anime. They might have a show that they like, but they're not necessarily anime fans. You know what I mean? Merch, buying merch in Japan. I lost my mind the first few years I was here. I was buying everything, which is completely unnecessary when you have to clean your house, especially in Japan because dust collects very easily. So now I gotta like clean all this dust off of things. It wasn't a smart move, but like I'm just saying, like relax on the merch. Like you can buy it everywhere, so you don't have to buy everything as soon as you see it. You'll be okay. You'll be able to find it. You can often find it very cheaply, especially if you go to like Nipponbashi. There are a lot of secondhand stores because people just don't keep their merch for that long. They'll just, you know, keep it or they'll get it and then they'll sell it. So you can buy a lot of figures secondhand. Most of my figures I got like secondhand. I don't really pay for them up front because they're from like UFO catchers. So like my little Captain Usopp thing, like this is like $10. Like it's so cute too. He's so cute. But like, yeah, you can get like figures for like $10. So don't waste all your money on a crane game when you could just go downtown and buy it for $10. And there's a lot of collaboration goods like cat clothes with little Zoros on it, or on the right bottom. Those are token Nambu. I don't even know what they are. I don't think they do. This is like keychain straps that came with like bottles of tea, and I wanted all of them. So I obsessively went to every konbini to buy all the tea so I could have each freaking token. Like I said, I had a problem the first few years. Don't be like me. Like, just to make sense with your purchases. You don't have to buy everything. It's not necessary. So yeah, go to secondhand shops and save yourself some money. Utena phone charm, which I lost. I'm kind of sad now that I look at the picture because I really like that phone charm. Alien figures from like a capsule toy machine. The One Piece food thing is from USJ when they have their One Piece event. There's like a One Piece air freshener. You can buy it like, you know, they don't sell it anymore, but you could buy it at like the drugstore. Keychains, Sailor Moon rods that I still have in their boxes and just sit on my wall. And like that's all of the basics. I wrapped up a little bit earlier than I intended. I must have been talking really fast, so my bad. But yeah, that's all the basics. Hopefully I covered everything. I'm going to go through the chat to see if there is any questions or if there's anything you guys want to say. Go ahead and like drop it in the chat now. I want to encourage you to follow Black creators that are based in Japan because it's just very hard to find us, not because we're not there. There are a lot of Black creators in Japan. But you know how the algorithm be. The algorithm is not kind to people that are dark-skinned or not white. So you have to really, unfortunately, you will have to go out of your way to find Black people in Japan that are making content online. But there are a lot of us. And if we can get more support for our community, it will be easier to find, right? It will be much easier to find. So yeah, just... if you need suggestions, message me. That's my handle, at Nanairomiso, on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Twitter. You can find me in all those places. Yeah, that's about it. And that image is from the Lupin Cafe at USJ, because I basically only go to Universal Studios Japan all the time. So that is everything. I'm just going to share my face now. Unless you guys want to see like more stuff. I don't know. How are you guys feeling? Was it interesting? MJGA. Yeah, Japanese MAGA is a thing. There are Trump supporters in Japan. They had a Trump support march back when they were doing the like, oh, the votes are fake thing. Yeah, they were out there protesting the fake votes. So they're out there, but they were only like, you know, a couple, 20, 30 of them. They're not as big in number. Where does Kyoto land in these regions? Ah, wow, I should have said that. I'm so sorry. Kyoto is like such a major place. Kyoto is north of Osaka. You can get to Kyoto in like 20 minutes from Osaka. So the Kansai region has Osaka, Kobe, and Kyoto. Nara as well, if you know like the deer park. Nara is in Kansai. You can get to all of these places in like 20 minutes if you take the express train. So that's one of the nice things about living in the Kansai area. If you like those regions, you don't have to just worry about going to them or taking a long time to go to them. It's very easy to get to. Electricity bills are wild. Yes. I think my electricity bill was like $150 in January because I just had the heat on all the time. And yeah, when you leave your room that you've heated up with your gas stove, your electrically powered gas stove, everywhere else is freezing cold and it sucks. So if you don't like the cold, I suggest you live in the Kyushu region, which is southern Japan, or in Okinawa. Freaky. Oh yeah, the prostitution houses actually don't allow a lot of foreigners. So even though they're freaky, they're hella freaky, you might not be able to get in, which is kind of sad, but liabilities, I guess. Yeah, don't get roppongied, whatever that means. I'm not from Tokyo, so is that a bad thing? Are my neighbors friendly? I was gonna say yes, but then I got into an argument with my neighbor that lives right in front of me because he was blaming me for the trash in front of my yard, which wasn't my fault. We have stray cats in the neighborhood, and he often feeds the stray cats and plays with the stray cats. I know because I've seen him, but he was trying to be like, oh yeah, you need to like put your garbage like down the street and that like garbage pile over there because the cats are getting into it and it's making the front of the house a mess. And I was like, look, sir, I went to the ward office. They told me to put my trash in front of my house, and that's where they were going to pick it up. If there are problems with cats, it's probably because you be feeding them all the time, and that's why they're always in my garbage. And we were like really going at it until his wife came out and was like, it's okay, kids. I'm so sorry he did this. It's okay. And I was like, but other than that, I've not talked to my other neighbors. I've only talked to him. Yeah. We're all in separate houses. We're not like, it's not an apartment. So there's no really need for us to communicate with each other. But so far, no negative interactions. So that's good. Back in my old apartment, there were only 2 rooms per floor. And we were like, the doors were facing each other. So we almost never saw each other then. But I never had any problems with my neighbors then. But I have heard some unfortunate stories of like neighbor problems in Japan. So don't think that it can't happen. But I think maybe it's on the rarer side if it does happen. No. As always ask the Japanese companies. Like if you, I know like especially when you get to Japan and you've been studying the language, you are not going to have like the confidence in your language skill, but like just do it is my recommendation, to just do it and you'll probably be okay. You might feel embarrassed for a second, but you'll regret not having done it in the future, I think. So I think that's it. I'm done with my panel. I hope you guys enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. Thank you. Thank you very much. You guys are very kind. ありがとうございます。I can share the slides if you need me to. I'll like say that, put a link so you can like look at it somewhere on the internet. There we go. Boom. Ah, I saved it. I shared it privately. My bad. Here you go. If you want to look at the panel in your free time, dozo.